Chapter 1, Start of the Broadcast. In the pre-evening twilight, when the city was already beginning to twinkle with lights, and the coolness was gently embracing the streets of the metropolis, the audience gathered in the studio of one of the most popular talk shows, ready to witness an extraordinary broadcast. An elegantly decorated hall with soft spotlights and endless rows of chairs created an atmosphere of high anticipation. Today's issue promised a sensation, because the host was supposed to be visited by young Barron Trump, a representative of the famous dynasty, who was spoken of as a promising and intellectually developed young man. For his supporters, he has already become a symbol of a new generation, capable of not only inheriting a glorious name, but also bringing a fresh perspective to politics and business. In the minutes leading up to the show, the studio was quietly bustling with camera operators preparing cameras, assistants checking microphones, and the lighting rig flickering tirelessly, as if trying to catch every spark of anticipation. There was a slight nervousness in the air, mixed with excited anticipation. Amid these preparations, the talk show host, known for her bluntness and ability to provoke discussion, was already preparing her questions. Her confident voice and polished manner belied the intention to cause a real scandal by putting Barron in an unfavorable light, especially when it came to his family and, in particular, his mother, a woman he had always extolled as a symbol of warmth, support, and wisdom. With the studio in full attention, the credits for the broadcast rolled on the screen. The audience applauded, followed by a standing ovation, and the atmosphere reached its height of festive spirit. At that moment, a young Barron Trump walked onto the stage, his demeanor radiating calm and confidence, despite the fact that he knew he would be faced with tough questions and perhaps provocative attacks. His gaze, fixed forward, was determined, and his tone was that of a man accustomed to being the center of attention, but who never forgot that a person's true strength lies in his convictions and principles. The first minutes of the broadcast were spent in a friendly conversation, where the host asked questions about current projects, plans for the future and personal views on politics. However, gradually the topic of the interview began to move to more personal aspects, when the host's attention focused on questions about family and, in particular, about Barron's mother. The questions were asked with obvious provocation, the host used harsh expressions, ridiculed the appearance and, as it seemed to her, the weaknesses of his mother, trying to evoke an emotional reaction and give the broadcast a scandalous character. These words, like icy arrows, pierced the atmosphere of the studio, causing shock and bewilderment among some viewers who knew how important his family was to Barron. For a moment, the entire room froze as the host continued her insulting remarks without hesitation, seeking to cast doubt on the humanity of the woman he had always defended in interviews and public appearances. The words sounded as if the goal was not to find the truth, but to create a sensation at any cost. At this critical moment, Barron's face flashed with a feeling of deep pain and rage, but he managed to restrain himself, not giving in to his emotions in front of the camera and the millions of viewers watching the broadcast live. This tense atmosphere was the starting point for what was to change the entire course of the program. Inside the studio, amid genuine excitement and bated breath, there was a sense that there was more to this on-air spectacle than just an ordinary interview. People knew that the honor of not only his mother was at stake today, but also that of an entire dynasty raised on the principles of respect and family values. Thus, the first chapter of the story sets the tone for the upcoming events, the atmosphere of an elite evening, filled with glitter, preparation and high expectations, foreshadows a heated confrontation between a provocative journalist and a young but very confident Barron Trump. His calm and determination already at the start of the broadcast make viewers believe that not everything in this story is determined by sensational attacks, and that true dignity and strength of character can prevail, despite any attempts to manipulate public opinion. This evening promises to be a turning point, and everyone present in the studio feels that at stake are not only the votes of voters, but also eternal values that will never lose their significance. Chapter 2, Provocation of the Host. At the very beginning of the broadcast, with the studio filled with the sounds of applause and the flickering lights of the spotlight, the talk show host, known for her penchant for sharp attacks, immediately interviewed the young Barron Trump. From the first seconds, her manner of asking questions betrayed the intention not just to find out the guest's opinion, but to launch a sensation that could shake the audience. Her voice, confident and slightly mocking, penetrated the air, and every word she spoke sounded as if the goal was to expose the shortcomings in the life of the famous dynasty. She skillfully began with general questions about business plans and prospects, but gradually steered the conversation to a personal topic, making each viewer expect that something scandalous would follow. The host had carefully prepared her questions the night before, studying biographies and past interviews to find a weak spot in Trump's image. Her goal was clear: to show that behind the glitz of wealth and success there was a personal history full of compromises. And so, as the broadcast reached its climax, she suddenly moved on to the most painful issue: criticism of Barron's mother. The words she chose were harsh and direct, filled with sarcasm and mockery. She began with comments on appearance, accusing his mother of not living up to the high standards of high society in her clothes and manner of dressing. Her intonation was poisonous, and every word she uttered seemed like a blow to the family's honor, causing indignation not only among Trump's fans, but also among some viewers who understood that such treatment was unacceptable. A tense silence fell over the studio, and even the cameras, capturing every emotion, seemed to be trying to catch the slightest change in the atmosphere. The journalist continued, asking questions about how Barron's mother could allow family values to be so distorted, and why her appearance showed a superficial attitude to tradition. Each of her questions was carefully constructed to sow doubts about the sincerity of the family's foundations, and her words, like icy arrows, penetrated the hearts of listeners, leaving only cold and disappointment in their wake. Some members of the studio, hearing such accusations, exchanged glances full of surprise and bewilderment, because many knew that Barron's mother had always been a person with a big heart and great spiritual strength. But the journalist, not wanting to stop there, intensified her attacks, adding more and more questions that were clearly provocative. Her tone became more and more aggressive, and it seemed that she was deliberately trying to humiliate not only the guest's personality, but also his entire family, trying to create an image of an unprotected person deprived of any support. The provocation had a double effect: on the one hand, it excited the audience's interest; on the other, it created a deep inner turmoil in the young Trump. A feeling grew inside him that such attacks were not only unfair, they were insulting and violated the sacred family ties for which he had always stood. Each line of the host, filled with caustic comments and merciless reproaches, seemed to cut into his inner world, awakening a desire to defend his mother's honor. At the same time, her words forced the audience to think about how important it is to judge a person not by his external appearance, but by the inner strength accumulated over years of trials and tribulations. Thus, during the broadcast, when the host boldly moved from general questions to personal attacks, the tension grew to the limit. Each of her questions, asked with the intention of causing a storm of emotions, became another test for Barron, forcing him to feel that his family and the values he believed in were being mocked and insulted. This moment became the starting point for the coming conflict, when the young representative of the dynasty, no longer willing to put up with injustice, will prepare to defend his honor and protect those he loves. Thus, the second chapter of the story sets the tone for the upcoming confrontation, revealing how the host's provocative questions, filled with aggression and bias, threaten the foundations of family values. This chapter not only demonstrates the manipulation methods used in the media, but also sets the stage for the emotional and intellectual battle that will unfold in the following chapters, when Barron decides to fight back and defend the honor of his family. Chapter 3: The Art of Argumentation. After the talk show host tried to bring private moments from his mother's life into the public eye with her sharp and provocative questions, the atmosphere in the studio became tense. At that moment, Barron Trump, young and calm, like a deeply rooted tree, began to demonstrate his ability to turn even the most painful provocations into a lesson in wisdom. His eyes, full of determination, looked straight at the camera lens, and he took a deep breath, as if gathering his strength in the face of the injustice that was trying to destroy his mental balance. "My mother is the person who taught me to look at life differently," he began calmly. "Her words, her actions and her endless patience became a beacon for me, showing the true value of the human soul. I grew up listening to her stories, where the main thing is not external wealth, but internal strength, not status, but the ability to forgive and love, no matter what. Every sound, every word sounded with such peace that it seemed as if the studio itself was enveloped in a quiet glow of truth, capable of melting the ice of biased assessments. His speech was structured like a carefully rehearsed symphony, with each note a logical argument, each pause a time for deep reflection. Barron began by explaining that his parents made decisions in an environment far removed from modern standards, and that their every move should be viewed through the lens of the times in which they lived. He continued confidently, "My family history is not a series of impersonal facts, but a complex web of fates, mistakes, and lessons. We all learn from our mistakes. My mother, despite her modesty, always strove for perfection, and it was her life's journey that gave me the understanding that true greatness is measured not by external brilliance, but by the ability to overcome difficulties with dignity." Throughout the interview, he answered each tricky line with equanimity and precision, citing examples from his own life and memories of how his mother helped him in the most difficult moments. He talked about how, as a child, she consoled him after defeats in sports competitions, how she taught him not to be afraid of mistakes and to look at each failure as an opportunity to become stronger. His voice became more and more confident, and each word seemed to confirm that he knows the value of true values, which are not measured by fashion standards or branded items, but are formed by years of love, support and life wisdom. His argument was not only personal but also deeply rooted in the importance of respecting each individual, regardless of appearance. He argued that society often judges by appearances, forgetting that behind each person lies a story of joys, pains, and lessons that cannot be measured by money or status. Appearances can be deceiving, he continued confidently, but character and spiritual strength are revealed in trials. My mother is an example of how even the most humble circumstances can produce a person with a huge heart and an indestructible spirit. His answers were so convincing that the audience began to change their perception of what was happening. People who were initially set for provocation gradually understood that behind each of his words there was a deep thought and a sincere commitment to family values. Even the host, accustomed to sharp attacks, froze for a moment, faced with the fact that her attempt to humiliate did not achieve the desired effect. Instead of an emotional reaction, Barron demonstrated the art of argumentation, which turned even the most painful accusations into an opportunity for constructive dialogue. At the end of his speech, he concluded, "I urge you all to remember that a real person is not valued by how he looks, but by what he carries in his heart. Others should be judged by their actions, not by their appearance. My mother is more than just a parent to me, she is my teacher, my guide in a world where true greatness lies in kindness and love." These words, filled with sincere faith and wisdom, made the audience think about their own prejudices and change their attitude towards those who at first glance may seem unremarkable. Thus, in the third chapter, Barron Trump defends his mother's honor with dignity and precision, turning tricky questions into lessons in respect and deep understanding of human nature. His art of argumentation not only dissuades those who try to humiliate his family, but also becomes a shining example of how true strength lies in calm, logic, and a sincere desire to protect the most important values. This chapter becomes a turning point in the interview, where the voice of reason and love wins over superficial assessments and proves that true greatness is determined not by external attributes, but by inner strength of spirit. Chapter 4: A Decisive Response. As the tension in the studio reached its peak, and the host's every remark, filled with stinging reproaches, cut through the atmosphere, Barron Trump felt that he could no longer remain silent. At the moment when the journalist's last words echoed around the room, the young Trump, as if awakened from a long sleep, rose from his seat. His movements were smooth but full of determination. He stepped forward, his gaze, firm and focused, met the host's eyes, and in that moment, time seemed to stand still. He began to speak in a calm but firm voice, which immediately made it clear that behind his every word there was not only personal dignity, but also a deep belief in true values. "My mother is not just a woman," he began, "but a person who taught me honesty, humility, and kindness all my life. Her actions, her wisdom, accumulated over the years of trials, are a true measure of the strength of the soul, which no fashionable standards or superficial assessments can measure. With each word, his tone became more and more confident, and each phrase sounded like a carefully constructed argument, reflecting not only his personal attitude, but also the philosophy instilled in him since childhood. Barron recounted many moments from his own childhood, stories of how his mother had helped him through tough times, how she had taught him to forgive and appreciate every moment of life, even when everything around him seemed unfair. He spoke of how her words had always been a source of inspiration to him, how she had taught him not to judge people by their appearance, but to look for true wealth in their actions and hearts. Whenever, he said, someone tried to judge my mother by her appearance, I remembered how she overcame life's difficulties by remaining true to her principles. True greatness is not determined by expensive clothes or status, it is measured by their kindness, wisdom, and capacity to love. His voice steady, his words penetrating the hearts of his listeners. Among those in the studio, previously primed for a provocative spectacle, a dawning understanding began to dawn. This was not just an insult, but an attempt to humiliate the woman of whom he had always been proud. His decisive answer, filled with sincerity and logic, seemed to dissolve the journalist's cold attacks, forcing the audience to fall silent in awe. He continued, confidently moving from personal experience to a more general message: we all, no matter who we are, deserve respect. Judging a person by appearances is superficial. I encourage you all to look deeper, to look for that genuine kindness in people that gives them true greatness. These words became the culmination of the broadcast. His calm manner, unwavering confidence and profound logic turned the usual course of events upside down, and even the host herself, clearly stunned by his answer, momentarily lost the aggressive expression for which she was known. The audience's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The applause, initially hesitant and muted, quickly grew into a roaring rapture. The people in the audience, hanging on his every word, understood that true dignity is demonstrated in the ability to stand up for one's beliefs and defend the honor of one's loved ones. The scene was a lesson not only for everyone present, but for viewers around the world. When someone tries to humiliate others, true strength lies in the ability to respond with dignity, wisdom, and calm. Barron Trump concluded his answer with a short but powerful statement: I am proud of my mother. Her life's journey is a lesson I will carry with me for the rest of my life. And if anyone chooses to judge a person by their appearance, let them remember that their true worth lies deep within. His words, delivered with genuine sincerity, were forever imprinted in the audience's minds, changing not only his perception but also how we should all treat people, judging them not by their outward attributes, but by their soul and actions. Thus, the third chapter not only became a turning point of the broadcast, but turned into a symbol of the fact that even in the conditions of harsh public criticism, one can find the strength to defend one's most cherished values. His decisive response marked the victory of reason and inner strength over superficial reproaches, letting everyone understand that the true dignity of a person cannot be measured by fashion trends or provocative statements, but is determined by love, respect, and life wisdom. Chapter 5: The Victory of Erudition and the Condemnation of Prejudice. After Barron Trump finished his decisive response, a deep silence fell over the studio, which soon turned into thunderous applause. The room, previously divided between supporters of the provocative journalist and defenders of the young Trump, was now united in admiration for his ability to defend his mother's honor with dignity and logic. The cameras, recording every emotion, captured the moment when his words, spoken with undeniable confidence, cut through preconceived notions and made even the host momentarily silent. In that decisive moment, everyone in the room understood that true strength does not come from sharp attacks, but from the ability to remain calm and respond to accusations with facts, personal experience, and deep wisdom. After the broadcast, public opinion changed dramatically. Heated discussions began on social networks and news pages. Many commentators condemned the journalist's methods, pointing out that her questions were derogatory and violated the boundaries of personal life. Experts noted that such provocations do not contribute to constructive dialogue, but only incite unnecessary conflicts. Even those who initially supported the host's harsh rhetoric began to be critical of her behavior, realizing that humiliating people is not the path to truth, but only a way to sow discord. Young Trump, receiving a standing ovation and support, made a brief but heartfelt closing statement. He reminded everyone that true human worth is measured not by external attributes but by internal qualities such as honesty, kindness, and forgiveness. "My mother is a person with a huge heart and unshakable wisdom," he said, "and no sensational attacks can eclipse the light of her soul. Let us learn to look deeper, to understand that each of us has a story, and to judge each other not by our outer appearance, but by what we carry in our hearts." His words sounded like a powerful manifesto against bias, and their clarity and sincerity became a starting point for many to rethink their own judgments. The lights of the room, softened by the evening lights, seemed to symbolize a new era in public discourse, where respect for the individual has become the main principle. After the broadcast, many influential personalities and public figures spoke out in support of Trump, noting that such a position is a sign of true leadership and maturity. The press, previously prone to sensationalism, began to write articles about the importance of ethical principles in journalism, and that true reporting should be based on objectivity, not the desire to cause a scandal. The heated discussions on social networks showed that the topic of respect for privacy has become hot, and more people began to realize that derogatory comments are not a way to achieve the truth, but only a way to destroy human dignity. Over the next few days, public opinion grew stronger, and the interview with the young Trump became one of the most talked about events in the country. His ability to answer provocative questions with dignity and logic became an example for many young people, showing that even in the most difficult situations, one can remain calm and confident. This victory of erudition was not only a personal triumph, but also a symbol of the revival of a more respectful and honest approach to communication in the media. Thus, the culmination of the interview not only showed that true strength lies in protecting your loved ones and principles, but also confirmed that respect for a person must be above all else. The victory of reason and inner strength over superficial aggression became a vivid lesson for everyone who watched this broadcast. This day will forever remain in the memory as the moment when bias and manipulation gave way to sincerity, mutual respect, and the desire for truth. The story became a reminder that each of us should strive to see a person not through the prism of appearance, but through the depth of his soul, and that true dignity is born from the ability to defend one's values even in the face of harsh criticism.